In 2004, two best friends vanished after school. For 8 long years, there were no clues, no answers, only silence, until a wildfire tore through a forgotten field and uncovered something no one was ready to find. Before you hear what they discovered, hit subscribe button and comment where you are watching from, because this is one story you'll never forget. Springdale, Wisconsin, March 18, 2004. It was a cold Thursday afternoon, the kind that smelled faintly of rain and chalk dust. At Springdale Middle School, classes had just broken for lunch. Inside the cafeteria, two girls sat together, whispering and laughing like they always did. Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe. Both 14, both inseparable since kindergarten. If you saw one, you saw the other. Same shoes, same bracelets, same secret smiles that only best friends share. At 12:37 p.m., they were caught on a hallway camera, walking side by side, heading toward the gym. A friend later told police the girls had mentioned they were going to meet someone. No one knows who. By 2 p.m., when the final bell rang and students poured out of classrooms, Lily and Sarah were gone. Not late, not hiding, gone. Their lockers were still locked, backpacks untouched, phones inside. Every trace of them, frozen in that moment before they stepped out of sight. When they didn't come home, the first call started. Lily's mom thought maybe Sarah's house. Sarah's mom thought maybe Lily's. Then came the silence, the kind that tightens your chest before panic sets in. By nightfall, police cars filled the school parking lot. Flashlights swept the playground, the field behind the gym, the nearby woods. Dogs barked, radios crackled, but nothing. No footprints, no sounds, just the whisper of wind through empty bleachers. The next morning, detectives questioned everyone, classmates, teachers, even the janitor. A few kids said they saw the girls near the gym doors. Others swore they heard someone arguing behind the bleachers. But no one could say what really happened. Then came the interviews. They were sweet girls, always together. A teacher. They never fought with anyone. A classmate. Maybe they ran away? The sheriff's first comment. But how could two girls run away with no phones, no money, no jackets, and no one noticing? Search parties formed. Volunteers combed through woods, drainage tunnels, even the river 2 miles out. Posters went up across town. Missing Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe. Weeks passed, then months, and the same question haunted everyone in Springdale. How do two girls vanish from a school full of people without leaving a single clue? In the days that followed, Springdale was no longer the quiet little town everyone knew. It became a maze of flashing lights, reporters, and whispered rumors. Police swarmed the school, questioning teachers, janitors, and students, trying to piece together the last moments anyone saw Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe. But every answer seemed to lead to another dead end. The janitor, a middle-aged man named Carl Jenkins, told officers he'd seen the girls near the gym around lunchtime, laughing, heading toward the back field. He said they looked happy and normal, but when asked who else was nearby, his story began to blur. A teacher, Mrs. Hawthorne, told a different story. She claimed she saw a blue pickup truck parked by the back field that same afternoon, a truck she'd never seen before. She described it as old, with peeling paint and no license plate on the front. But no one else remembered seeing it. No one. Detectives checked every truck in the county that matched the description. Nothing. Leads began to dry up like rain on hot pavement. Every suspect was questioned, every tip exhausted. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no signs of struggle. It was as if the girls had simply vanished into thin air. Weeks turned into months, and the longer the case dragged on, the uglier the whispers became. Parents began demanding answers. People started saying the school was hiding something, that someone inside knew more than they were saying. Some accused the principal, others pointed fingers at the janitor, and some even at the sheriff himself. The once peaceful town was now divided by suspicion. It's been 60 days since Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe disappeared, and investigators say they're no closer to finding answers. Local news anchors repeated the story every night. Candlelight vigils filled the schoolyard. Photos of the two girls, smiling, full of life, became haunting reminders of what had been lost. The parents, Elaine Monroe and Janet Parker, refused to give up. They started petitions, spoke at schools, appeared on talk shows. They became the faces of missing children awareness, traveling across states, begging for help. But behind the cameras, both women were breaking, piece by piece. By the end of 2004, the posters began to fade in the rain. Reporters stopped calling. Even the police stopped updating the families. And by spring of the next year, the case was quietly moved to the cold files. The file sat on a dusty shelf inside the Springdale Sheriff's Department, unopened, untouched. March 2006, 2 years after Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe vanished from Springdale Middle School. The investigation had gone cold. Files were boxed, desks were cleared, and in the heart of Springdale, silence had taken over. The town of Springdale. Empty playgrounds, rusty swings, peeling missing posters on streetlights. People don't talk about it anymore. Not because they stopped caring, but because it hurts too much. Elaine Monroe, Sarah's mother, still keeps her daughter's room untouched. A half-made bed, a school bag on the chair. Every night she lights 2 candles by the window, one pink, one white. Her diary entry from that winter reads, "I don't sleep anymore. Every dream ends with her calling my name." Meanwhile, in another part of town, Detective Ray Morris, now demoted to desk duty, sits in his office surrounded by dust-covered case files. He replays the same thought every night. "We missed something. I know we missed something." Late one Friday afternoon, a brown envelope arrives at the sheriff's office. No name, no address, just the words, "For Detective Morris." Inside, a VHS tape, labeled Springdale Middle School, March 18, 2004, West Hallway. When Morris pops it into the player, the screen flickers to life. Grainy footage fills the monitor, time-stamped 12:37 p.m. 2 familiar faces appear, Lily and Sarah, walking side by side down the hall, laughing, heading toward the gym. But then, something else. A tall figure enters the frame, about 10 seconds later. Broad shoulders, cap. He follows the girls for a few seconds. Then the footage cuts out in static. The tape ends exactly 9 seconds before the hallway camera was supposed to switch angles. It wasn't a glitch. Someone had cut that part. Morris brings the tape to a forensic video lab in Madison. Experts enhance it frame by frame. They confirm. The man was wearing a school maintenance jacket. On the back, barely visible, the faded letters SMS. Springdale Middle School. When Morris checks the school's archived footage, something horrifying emerges. That entire segment, from 12:36 p.m. to 12:45 p.m., was deleted from the original recording. Whoever sent the tape had a copy of something that no longer existed. And whoever deleted it had access to the system. Detective Morris visits Principal Evelyn Carver, who'd been at the school since 1999. She's nervous, keeps glancing at the door. When shown the tape, she goes pale. Carver: "That's impossible. We were told those tapes were corrupted." Morris: "Told by who?" Carver: "District Administration. They handled all security footage after the investigation closed." She explains that weeks after the girls disappeared, a man from the district safety board came and retrieved every hard drive and VHS backup. His name? She doesn't remember, or refuses to. Before Morris leaves, Carver adds one last thing. Carl Jenkins was furious when they took the tapes, said they were his responsibility. Carl Jenkins, the janitor, the same man whose name haunted the edges of every police report. At this point, Jenkins has already retired and moved out of state. But when detectives search his old storage closet at the school, they find something unusual. A dusty cabinet. Inside, a set of VHS labels. Gym, March 2004. Cafeteria, March 2004. Hallway C, 318. But every tape inside is blank. Morris sends them for lab recovery, all wiped clean. Still, one thing stands out. On the spine of the hallway tape, written faintly in pencil, is the word backup. If there was a backup tape, someone went through a lot of effort to make sure no one saw it. The story of the tape leaks to the press. Reporters swarm Elaine Monroe and Janet Parker. Elaine stands on her porch, clutching her daughter's photo. They said the footage was corrupted. They said it didn't exist. And now, out of nowhere, it's here? Someone's been lying to us. Janet, Lily's mom, breaks down on live TV. If they had this 2 years ago, maybe we'd know what happened to our girls. Maybe they didn't want to know. The two mothers, once close, begin to drift apart. Elaine believes the school is hiding something. Janet believes the police are. Grief divides them the same way it divided the town. A whistleblower from the school district's IT department contacts Morris. He claims that the order to delete footage came from above, someone trying to protect the district's reputation. He also reveals something darker. In 2003, the year before the girls disappeared, there had been an internal complaint filed against Carl Jenkins. An anonymous student reported inappropriate behavior after detention hours. But the report was buried, labeled as unsubstantiated, filed away. It wasn't the first time Jenkins' name showed up in sealed records, and it wouldn't be the last. Meanwhile, Elaine's obsession grows unbearable. She begins driving to the school every night, parking by the old field. Neighbors see her sitting there for hours. Sometimes she brings a flashlight, scanning the ground. Sometimes she hears things. Footsteps, whispers, a child's laugh. One night she swears she sees two figures standing by the tree line. When she runs toward them, nothing's there. Her journal entry that night reads, "They're not gone, they're waiting." Back at home, she replays the news clip about the missing tape on her old TV, over and over, frame by frame, pausing when the shadow appears behind the girls. She zooms in on the faint silhouette, a cap, a bulky jacket, and something gleaming in the figure's hand, a flashlight, the same model the school issued to maintenance staff, the same kind later found years later in the storage basement. The tape that was never meant to be found had resurfaced for a reason. It was the first flicker of truth in 8 years of darkness. What no one knew was that it wouldn't be the last secret buried in Springdale. Because in the years to come, when the fire finally tore through that field, the truth would burn its way to the surface. August 2012. Springdale hadn't seen rain in over 3 weeks. The air was thick, dry, and angry. The kind of summer where the ground itself seemed to groan under the sun's weight. Farmers watched their crops wilt, and the once green field behind Springdale Middle School had turned into a brittle sea of yellow weeds. Then came the spark. No one knows how it started. Maybe a broken bottle, maybe lightning. But by dusk, flames had spread fast, licking through the brush and racing toward the edge of town. Firefighters worked through the night, their silhouettes glowing orange against the burning horizon. Smoke rolled through the empty streets like ghosts returning home. By sunrise, the fire was finally contained, and the field that had been untouched for 8 long years was now nothing more than black ash and smoldering earth. When the smoke began to clear, one firefighter noticed something glinting beneath the dirt, a small flash of silver among the charcoal. He knelt down, brushed away the soot with his glove, and found a bracelet, bent, burnt, but still legible. Best friends forever, L and S. At first it looked like nothing, maybe a piece of old jewelry lost years ago. But when he radioed it in, the silence that followed was heavier than the smoke. That name, those initials, were the same ones from the town's darkest chapter. Within an hour the field was sealed off, fire trucks gave way to police cars, and soon crime scene tape fluttered where flames had been. Forensic teams arrived in white suits, cameras flashing, metal detectors sweeping the scorched soil. Reporters gathered again at the same chain-link fence that hadn't seen a crowd in nearly a decade. One detective, a rookie back in 2004, stood there, staring at the ashes, and whispered, "They were right here, all along." By evening, a quiet stillness fell over Springdale once again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of forgetting. It was the silence before the truth finally claws its way to the surface. Because when the ground burns away what's on top, sometimes it reveals what's been buried beneath. Sound of soft wind over burnt earth, faint clicking of camera shutters, quiet murmurs from investigators. The morning after the fire, detectives returned to the field. Ash still clung to their boots, and the air smelled of smoke and something older, something rotten beneath the soil. A forensic team began digging around the spot where the bracelet was found. At first they thought it was routine, a small excavation to rule out animal bones or old debris. But then, one of them stopped. Pause, sound of metal striking bone. Something pale had surfaced through the dirt. Round, fragile, a skull. And just beside it, another. Camera clicks intensify, ambient tension rises. 2 skeletons, buried shallow side by side, as if someone wanted them hidden, but not forgotten. For hours the team worked in silence, brushing away layer after layer of burnt soil, until the outlines of 2 small bodies emerged, still tangled together, like best friends who refused to let go. When word reached the command tent, the detective who'd whispered, "They were right here all along," slowly removed his cap and stared into the pit. He didn't need the DNA results. Everyone in Springdale already knew who they were. Brief silence everywhere. By evening, the lab confirmed it. Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe, the names that haunted the town for 8 long years, had finally come home. There were soft gasps from crowd-distant camera clicks. News vans swarmed the school once again. Parents who had once held vigils now stood frozen at the yellow tape. The town's grief, buried as deep as those graves, rose up all over again. But grief quickly turned to horror. When the autopsy results arrived, both skulls showed blunt force trauma, the kind of injury that ends a life in one violent swing. This wasn't a runaway. This wasn't an accident. It was murder. Then silence. And near the girl's remains, buried in the same shallow grave, investigators found something else. A key ring, rusted, partially melted by the fire. 5 keys fused together by heat. Metal clinking sound. Each key stamped with the same faint lettering. SMS, Springdale Middle School. The detectives exchanged uneasy looks. Only one person would have carried a set like that. The janitor, Mr. Jenkins, the quiet man who swept the hallways after dark, who vanished right after the girls did. His name hadn't been spoken in years, but now, with those keys in evidence, he was back. In every whisper, in every headline, and in every nightmare the town would ever have again. The field had finally given up its secrets, but what it revealed was darker than anyone ever imagined. Best friends forever, the bracelet had said. And in the end, it was true. There were sound of news anchors overlapping, police sirens faint in background, flashes of cameras. When the remains of Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe were confirmed, Springdale became the center of the nation's attention. Again, 8 years of silence shattered overnight. Headlines screamed, "Cold case solved after wildfire." News crews flooded the small town. Every talk show, every podcast, every true crime forum wanted answers. Detectives reopened the case file. Old VHS tapes, yellowed reports, faded photos. Everything that had once been ignored was now evidence. Sound of a detective flipping pages, projector hum, and one name kept surfacing. Carl Jenkins, the school janitor. He'd worked at Springdale Middle School until 2005. Quiet, polite, always alone. Then, right after the girls vanished, he retired suddenly and moved to Iowa. Back then, police questioned him briefly. He said he didn't know anything, and without proof, they let him go. But now, there was proof. Sound of metal keys jingling. The rusted keyring found beside the girls' remains matched the master maintenance key used at Springdale in 2004. Each key was engraved with the same serial number, registered under Carl's name. Detectives tracked him down, 71 years old, living alone in a small house outside Des Moines. When they knocked on his door, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. At first, he denied everything. He said he'd left Springdale because of bad memories, that he'd never hurt those girls. But evidence began to mount. His fingerprints were found on both girls. Locker doors, even though his janitorial assignment never included that hallway. And then came the discovery that broke the case open. Carl Jenkins had worked in 2 other schools before Springdale. Both times he was quietly dismissed, after complaints of inappropriate behavior toward students. But the files were sealed, protected by the schools to avoid scandal. When confronted with this, Carl's composure cracked. He asked for water. His hands trembled. And then he whispered, "I didn't mean to kill them." He said he caught Lily and Sarah skipping class near the gym that afternoon. He'd tried to teach them a lesson, scare them, make them go back to class. But when they screamed, he panicked. He swung his flashlight, once, then again. When he realized what he'd done, he dragged their bodies to the field behind the school. He buried them under the soil, alone in the dark. The next morning, he came back with grass seeds and planted weeds over the spot, hoping the ground would hide his sin forever. And for 8 years, it did. Carl Jenkins confessed everything, even though his confessions didn't quite feel like he was speaking the truth. As everyone thought there's more than what he confessed happened, it was obvious that he wasn't just spilling everything about the murder of the 2 girls. But before he could face trial, he collapsed in his cell from a heart attack, dead, just days after his confessions. For the parents, there was no justice, only an ending. For Springdale, there was no closure, only the haunting realization that the monster had been sweeping their hallways all along. They were right here all along. For the first time in nearly a decade, Springdale came together, not for answers, but for goodbye. The field that once hid so much pain was now a memorial ground. A row of candles lined the fence, flickering in the cool autumn air. Parents held hands. Children, too young to remember the story, stood silently beside them. At the center, a small wooden table held 2 framed photographs, Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe, smiling, alive, forever frozen in time. The mayor spoke briefly, his voice trembling through the microphone. "We can't undo the past," he said, "but we can promise to never let this happen again." Then, one by one, the townspeople placed white roses at the base of the memorial. And when it was Elaine's turn, Sarah's mother, she stepped forward slowly, her candle shaking in her hand. She knelt by the burned earth where her daughter had once lain hidden, touched the soil, and whispered through her tears, "You're found now, my girls. You're finally home." The next morning, the school unveiled a brass plaque near the gym entrance. It read, "In loving memory of Lily Parker and Sarah Monroe, may their light guide us toward protection and truth." The laughter of a new generation echoed through the hallways, and life somehow continued. But if you stand near the field at dusk, Locals still say you can hear the faint sound of two girls giggling before the wind carries it away. And though Springdale healed, it never forgot. Because some stories don't end when the case is closed. They linger in the soil, in the silence, and in the hearts of everyone who still believes justice, even hidden, always finds its way home. For 8 long years, the truth was buried beneath lies, fear, and silence. But sometimes, even fire becomes the light that reveals what's been hidden. Because in the ashes of Springdale, the truth finally spoke, and 2 voices silenced far too soon were finally heard again.